With GearBox going to take the reins with Saints Row going forward, I think it's about time we start telling them exactly what we want, making sure there's no real communication error and they can understand what, as Saints Row fans, people want from Saints Row, kind of learn from other publishers' missteps, and hopefully develop the best Saints Row yet. So in this video I'm going to do my best, and it's going to be a long one, to try and constructively talk about where Saints Row has faltered in the past in every single game, and what we would like to be expanded and improved upon going forward. This is going to be very different to a lot of my other videos, but I want to sit down and really have a conversation about exactly what we want. You could look at this as sort of a wish list, but I feel like for a lot of people this is going to be more of a necessity list with some additional extras. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get into it. So let's start off with the elephant in the room, the writing. So obviously people prefer the tones of 1 and 2 over 3, 4 and the reboot, but I want to start at a very base level. The level of writing needs to be improved. I did not enjoy how the reboot was wrote at all. I feel it was just so rushed and poorly paced. It was not very good. Quite frankly, there's not too many good points about its writing element, and even if the tone was something we enjoyed, if we had a story that poorly written, I think people would have hated it even more. On top of that though, going back to the tone, we are definitely going to be wanting to find a more Saints Row 2 to 2.5-esque tone. It's quite clear it's what people want. It's what people have wanted for years now. They wanted it with Saints Row 3, they wanted it with Saints Row 4, they wanted it with Gat Out of Hell, they wanted it with Agents of Mayhem, they've wanted it with a reboot. Please, 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 give the fans what they want. I think where the big faltering line seems to be is about how serious the story takes itself. It seems that in the later games it was a funny story with a couple serious moments, and whether you like those serious moments or not, they were few and far between, whereas we all want a serious story with some funny moments, which is what made the original game so good. Saints Row 2 is primarily a serious story. It takes itself serious and you're kind of paying attention to what's going on. But there are funny cutscenes in there that make you laugh because they're few and far between, which is what we want. We do not need a game that's constantly laughing at itself and making us laugh along with it, because it's hard to take it serious. It's hard to have those moments that we care about. Let's talk characters, because I know this one's not going to be an easy fix. I don't know where they're going to take the next game for Saints Row. Are we going to get a reboot? Are we going to get a sequel? I don't know, and quite frankly, it's so any direction right now, it can go wherever it wants. And as Flippy said, trying to predict the future of Saints Row is useless. So, let's just go with the idea that they're gonna continue with the current game. We're gonna get a sequel to Saints Row 2. Make the characters more bearable, please. I'm not saying completely change their personality. Some damage is done. You can't just completely rewrite characters, because then it's just a reboot again. And we don't want to get into the habit of constantly rewriting characters in direct sequels, because look what happened before. Whether people like them or hate them, stick to a theme. However, I do think that some changes are really necessary. Set the game 5 years in the future. That's literally all that needs to happen. Set it 5, 6, 7 years in the future. Have them more mature. That is enough to explain a decent change in every single character, where they're more mature, more grounded, and more tonally fitting to the title. You can do that so simply with that simple writing key, and nothing will be at fault here. And hell, the reboot doesn't even have technically an actual date the game is set in, so it can still be set in modern times, and we'll just pretend the reboot was 7 years ago. It doesn't matter. What really matters, to me at least, is that the game makes these characters a bit older and a bit more mature to fit in line with the game. Now, I'm not 100% sure where we're going to take the story from the reboot. That's up to the writing team, not me. Plus, I don't know where the DLCs are going to take us. But I would like to see this start off again as an origin story. That's really what Saints Row has always been about, starting from nothing and becoming something. I'd like to see that happen with a more serious and grounded approach. The issue with following up the reboot is that the original rise up story is quite a cringy and light-hearted one. It doesn't have that same effect that the older games had, and even if you didn't like Saints Row 3 and 4, you supported the Saints because they came up from nothing and they were really likable. These Saints, whilst technically coming up from nothing, the story was so poorly wrote, you didn't care too much, and I think that that's really an issue. So I would like to see a new rise-up story of the Saints, and I'd like to see them a bit older and maybe have some sort of event happen that makes them care. Whether it's something like one of them dying, whether it's something like, I don't know, the Saints being taken over and they have to start from the very beginning to take it back. I don't know, I don't care, make them mature. That's all that needs to happen, and I think that'll be good. Just set the tone right, make the characters a bit more mature, and I'm not even going to complain about physical appearances. I can get used to how the Saints look, as long as they act their age, and hopefully the age they're acting is a lot older in the title. So let's go to gameplay, because I feel like this is going to be an even trickier one to explain, so let's try and somehow split it up into segments. Let's talk about the world. So the map of Santo Ileso, I personally really enjoy. It's actually the highlight of the game for me, and it's the reason I would say to get the game if you just want to explore a good sandbox. But it's got some faults. There is no depth to it. there needs to be more interiors, there needs to be more to explore. That exploration is what gets people on the game. The fact they can go and find a new secret, find a new thing. And it's what kept me actually hooked to the reboot for such a long time, finding the UFO Easter eggs and such. I was really invested in what the map had to offer. Unfortunately, that depth started to lack once we got past the Easter eggs, as there was barely any interiors to go into. So, if they're doing the story, please format it as simple as this. If we are entering a building in a mission, open it up after the mission's complete. It's so simple to do. I know it may not be the most cost effective method and it might cost a lot to do, but it really adds a lot to the open world. And hell, add a few more interiors around the map and people were so pleased. It was one of the biggest complaints about the game, and I think that's important. Going back to gameplay, we need the aiming to be sorted out. The aiming's not very good in the reboot. They've tried to fix it and tweak it. I personally just don't think it's good. I think it's to the fact it's got a really high dead zone naturally, and aim acceleration is on. It just makes it really tricky. And also, it feels like there's input delay. So it's like an input delay, high dead zone, and aim acceleration. And even if I turn down my dead zone, it just feels awful still. So I think those things need to be sorted out. I may be wrong, and maybe it's something else, but it's just what I think. Also, if you watch Flippy's video, he talks about how some of the animations just block damage entirely. That's a stupid feature. No one wants that, please. Just make it so we can shoot enemies whenever they're there. If they get hit with a bullet, they should die. It's kind of that simple. But I feel like that's something that will be kind of buffered out as time goes on with the new game, as I feel like it's just a defect of the reboot being on a new engine and a new thing, as opposed to like a design choice. So we need the aiming to be sorted out, but also gameplay is really lacking in some areas. If you played any of the older games, you'd know that diversions work in a really simple but effective way, and they're a good way to get people playing for longer and longer. Stuff like muggings, hold-ups, vehicle surfing, all these things are beloved features by the Saints Row fans, and they were left out of the reboot, and it's a shame, because while we may not have appreciated them a ton while they were there, the second they were gone, the world just felt barren and empty, and I think that's really why a lot of people think Santo Ileso is as lifeless as it is, and don't worry, we'll come back to that in a second. I don't think it's just because of the lack of NPCs, I think it's actually because of the lack of fun that the map actually holds. The map is beautiful, but it feels more like a showcase of a tech demo opposed to the actual game. It just doesn't have enough stuff in it, and I think that that's really important. We need things like diversions to come back, as those to me are what gets people playing and what makes the game feel full of features and feature packed. I also want to see random events kind of happening. You know, it's a modern game, it's very simple what people want. They just want to see things kind of unfold in the game that you don't see in other games, and it's really simple to do. And again, it's not my necessarily job to design these things or give ideas for these things, but I think it's simple enough to say that we want more things in the open world that we can randomly come across and activate and mess around with. Stuff like blackjack at the casinos, poker, you know, just get us actually playing around with things hidden in the map. It doesn't always have to be about missions and objectives. Sometimes having the open world full of content is just enough. At least that's how I look at it, and I know a lot of other fans out there look at it the same way. Customization. So, customization is the forefront of Saints Row. Now, I'm going to be 110% honest. I personally feel the reboot has the best customization in the series. I know a lot of people agree and some people disagree. Whilst we are missing certain facial sliders, I think overall the product we have in the reboot is fantastic. My best advice for this, really, to improve it would just be to add more clothing items, maybe organize it a bit better into categories, give us proper layered clothing. The layered clothing in the reboot's not bad by any means, but you know, we should get different wear styles and stuff, and we shouldn't have to keep searching through items to find different ways to wear a hat, for example. That can be in a separate tab underneath the hat we want to pick. Very simple, and I think it's something that can be done with time, but all I ask is that the customization kind of just gets expanded upon. It does not need to be drastically revamped. I would say the basis of the reboot's customization is actually the best aspect about the game. It is really good, and I don't think it needs to be messed with too much. Maybe add a few more slides and have stuff like the voice slider be at the start of the game, not just something we get down the line. I think it's just really important to me that the customization stays as strong as it has been, as it is a key part of Saints Row and it's what people really want. So let's talk about activities. So activities overall in the Saints Row series have been fairly decent. So all I would ask is that you get rid of some of the more repetitive ones of the reboot. I don't want to go here, go there, go here, go there, or go here, shoot some bad guys, drive a car away. I want new and really fun ones. Think more back to the older games like Fuzz and Fight Club. Those are some really cool activities that everyone liked, and I would like to see those classics actually returned. So my advice would basically to be in this situation is what fans want is some classics returned, whilst having some new ones to mess around with. They don't have to be the most innovational thing in the world, they're just activities. But they do add a lot to the game, so make sure they're fun. That's all they need to be. Now this is where you can incorporate your wackiness, because I know the Volition team very much enjoys their messing around silly goofy mood. So put this into the activities. This is where the split can become. Keep the story serious with a few funny moments and put all of your wackier elements into the gameplay and open world and activities. This is where you should be allowed to have all the fun you want like you did in Saints Row 2, like spraying shit on buildings. That's what we want. We want the silliness as the side content, but primarily a story you can be invested into. This next one might be a bit stupid, but hear me out. I want the sequel to have balls. I know that sounds stupid, but I think the reboot, whilst not being woke and soy as some people like to claim it, was a very safe game. Its big cliffhanger moments, its big jaw-dropping moments weren't that deep. A car being pushed off a cliff is nothing compared to Aisha getting her head chopped off, or Gat being killed, or the fucking earth exploding. Those moments were serious. Those moments, whether they were wacky or super monotone and just deep, made you go, fuck. That's like insane. And whilst the Nina scene isn't necessarily bad, I think what we are missing is that emotional depth and the fact that just there was no weight to that scene. It just felt like that scene was so low-hanging fruit. There was no actual weight. There was no point where the player really felt anything other than that kind of sucks about her car. I think that's important, and I want that to come back. So I'm not saying don't go and make the game have its funnier moments, but what I am saying is when we have those darker moments, don't afraid to make them actually dark. Now this isn't me again saying don't go woke or whatever people like to say, because I don't think wokeness was really an issue with the reboot. I just think the reboot was too nice for Saints Row. It sounds stupid, but it was a very nice game. There weren't too many moments where I was like, holy crap. The only point I actually liked in the reboot for this whole holy crap moment was the last mission where you get stabbed, which sadly poor writing let it down because it made no sense. So all I ask is that when writing the story, if you're going to have the serious moments, make them serious. Don't be afraid to make people feel things when playing the game. It's what people love with gaming. Make people actually feel an emotion about its serious point, and that will get people hooked and invested. There's a few things that aren't at launch for the reboot that may be coming in the future, I don't know, that I think we could do with being at launch for this title. First of all, I would like to see a multiplayer. I know that that's silly, but multiplayer is very important for these style of games. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say something I think everyone will disagree with me on, but I really do feel this. I don't think we need a Saints Row 1 and 2 style multiplayer. I think those multiplayers are kind of outdated for Saints Row and open world crime games. I think we need a more GTA Online style multiplayer. I'm not saying copy it, but I'm saying have it so me and 8 friends can be messing around in the open world with some missions to do, some cool things to do together, have buildings we can buy. Basically, not copy GTA Online, but take some inspiration about how they get the players playing and grinding, because that is something people like to do. I would love to be someone who played day one, saved up all this money, got all this cool stuff, and proceeded forward. That is fun, that is rewarding, and that is why GTA is successful. However, I want you to make the key difference between what Rockstar and GTA Online had, which is I don't want you to abandon the single player. This is a hard balance to find, I know, but a lot of people like to look at it like, well, the online's doing well, so let's just pump that with content and forget the single player, that's done. No, you can balance it, you can add stuff to the single player and the multiplayer, and that will actually please fans, and that will be filling the gap that Rockstar cannot do at this point in time. I really feel this is important, and whilst multiplayer doesn't necessarily have to be in the game, if it's not there, it's not like I'm going to write off the reboot. It would just be so nice, but at the very least, 4-player co-op. At the least, we can get 4-player co-op. Come on. No way should we be getting a game in 2025, 2026, 2027 that can only have 2 people at once. That is really silly, so I really hope that that is something they handle. I'd like to see on-launch mod support as well. This is something that really should be there, and I don't want to be that guy, but I think the Epic deal has really screwed this over. I think that's kind of why the Epic deal is as stupid as it is. I don't know if this is true, but I feel that by having the Epic deal, it's hard to have mod support because, well, Steam is the best place for mod support. So all I ask is that, whether you're an Epic exclusive or not, mod support is there on launch. I feel it's very important to the game's future, its longevity, and pretty much just its community. And the community is what will make the game sell. I'm much more inclined to buy a game if I know its mod support behind it is incredible. It's just how I've been, and I know a lot of other people out there are the same. So I recommend doing that. Doesn't have to happen again, it's not something I'll cry about, but it's something I think would be a very big benefit to the game itself. So one thing I really liked about the reboot was its sort of community events it held. There were lots of events on the official server, Twitter, Instagram, everything, where you could submit characters to win real prizes. This was just really cool, and it got the community all playing and striving for one thing. So this to me is just a huge W, and I don't understand why you wouldn't kind of have this. So if I could say anything, just kind of keep in touch with the community. Don't be afraid to set up things. The Saints Row community is a very dedicated community. It works very hard to kind of make the games the best they can be, and like I said, its fan base is unreal. So don't be afraid to include them in on this stuff. This is things that people will seriously enjoy, and yeah, I think that kind of covers a majority of what I want to go over, covering the gameplay, story, and some other things. I think that's everything. There's probably tons I'm missing though. I know there's tons I'm missing, and again, there are plenty of other Saints Row YouTubers out there that want their input, but for me and my list and my community, this is basically an accumulation of a year plus of complaints about Saints Row whilst I've been in this community. So I hope that this video can kind of shed some light on what people actually want, and I don't know if you're even listening, but I hope that as fans of my channel, my subscribers, I hope you agree with me on this list. And yeah, I think this is very much what the community wants, and I just hope that going forward this is going to be what the community gets. I know that Saints Row can come back, and it really upsets me to hear a lot of people have given up on it, but I haven't, and I really think that Saints Row can be great again. So I hope that some of these things are listened to, and I'm a very honest person. By no means do I think every single one of these pleas I have will be answered, but I hope that at least some of them are, because I know that will definitely make it a really good game for us fans. So yeah, I hope that this list is kind of what everyone wants me to say. I hope that my subs and my viewers and the community's happy with this list. I hope it's good enough. But yeah, that's basically what I would want in a GearBox Saints Row, and I know you guys can deliver. I have faith. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what happens with the future of the Saints Row series, and although I feel like I'm very much jumping the gun with this video and doing it nice and early, better to get it out there now whilst things are still in the planning phase, eh? Thanks for watching everyone, see you soon.